Chapter 1, The Foundations of Government. Reading 1, From Colonies to United States. The First Settlers. Many people from Great Britain and other countries in Europe began to settle in Britain's North American colonies in the 17th century. They came for different reasons. Some came for religious freedom. Most came because they wanted a better life. At that time, European society was divided into different classes. If you were born into the lower class, it was difficult to move up in the world. In the American colonies, the settlers hoped to have a brighter future, to own a farm, to start a small business, to live among equals. The road to independence. The settlers wanted to make their own economic and political decisions based on their own needs. The British king had a different view, however. He wanted the settlers to accept and obey British laws, even though the settlers had no representatives in the British government. The king and the settlers disagreed about many things, especially about money. The king demanded that the settlers pay high taxes on stamps, sugar, and tea. When they protested against these taxes, the king sent his army to force them to obey. So, in 1775, the War for Independence, sometimes called the American Revolutionary War, began. On July 4th, 1776, a group of leaders from the colonies wrote and signed the Declaration of Independence, which stated the reasons that the 13 United States of America wanted to break away from Great Britain. Finally, in 1783, the war ended and the Americans won their independence. The United States Constitution. Winning the war was only the first step in becoming the United States. The Americans had to make some important decisions about their government. Should each of the old colonies be a separate country? Should all the states join to become one big country? Who should govern? Who should make the laws? They did not want a strong central government after their experiences of life under a king. Therefore, for several years, they tried a system with strong state governments and a weak central government. But it was a failure. Then, in 1787, a group of leaders met to discuss a new system of government. They wanted a republic. That is, a government with an elected leader instead of a king. They wanted a democratic government. In other words, a system based on the idea that all men are equal and that the government should represent all of the nation's citizens. The result was a constitution. The Constitution, which was adopted in 1789, creates the basic framework for the whole United States government. One of the most important points is the establishment of a federalist system. That is, a system that divides power and responsibility between the states and the federal or central government. Now, here's something about George Washington. George Washington was the general that defeated the British, and he also became the country's first president. George Washington was an officer in the American Army during the War of Independence. He used some unusual military strategies. At that time, there were general practices or rules for war in Western countries. No fighting during the winter, and no fighting at night or on holidays. Washington decided to break the rules in order to win the war. So, in 1776, when many of the British generals had gone home for the winter, Washington's men crossed the Delaware River on Christmas in the middle of the night and surprised the enemy troops. The result was the first major American victory, the Battle of Trenton. Washington led the American military for the rest of the war and went on to become the first president of the United States.